Hello and welcome to What a Guy Wants podcast. We are your hosts, Coach Yogesh and Coach Ali, and we talk about all things men on this podcast. Sometimes we also bring up issues which are more broader and general in case. How it is today, which is the topic of the victim mindset. Really cool topic, Ali. What do you think when I say victim mindset?
So, dude, as soon as you were talking, right, what came up for me, right, victim mindset is for me like it becomes really real at a time when there's something wrong in the house and I need to call an electrician or plumber, and because I don't understand their work, and I don't know, because of probably experience in the UK and stuff, the
Yeah.
initial mindset is that he's out here to get me because I don't understand what he's doing, right? He's out here to get me. I'm going to get used, and these people are always out there to get me, and
Yeah.
no matter what, he's going to overcharge me for something, so I'm going to get conned, and there's a part of me that feels sorry for myself for not knowing more. So what happens
Yeah.
is that I already make myself a victim before anything actually happens. What if this electrician or plumber is reasonable, which in most cases most people are, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that that comes across about a victim mindset. But going much more deeper into it, it's this mindset where life is, why does this always happen to me? It's
Yeah.
about this mindset of just not taking responsibility, placing blame, feeling that we're never in control of ourselves, and at
Yeah.
the same time, life is always happening to us, and it's not something where it's actually happened to us. It's a perception of it happening to us.
Yeah, if we think about victims, right? We talk about victims where something has happened to someone and they are really powerless. So, a victim state is generally, I don't have the power to change this scenario. So, I totally agree with that. Something which is very funny, which when you were talking about from the get go, I'm curious, you were talking about not trusting if the person is right or not. That comes under victim mindset as well.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me a little bit more about mistrust or distrust and victim mindset?
So mistrust and distrust were the victim mindset. So it's about, it's a beautiful question. As I think about it, it's about no matter what I do, I'm going to end up being used. And it's a very interesting one because I'm going to end up being used, and and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, a
Such an
thought came up
interesting
for
one.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go
wow.
ahead.
When you're a victim of something, right? Say you're a victim of crime, what are you looking for at that moment of time?
Comfort, right?
Yeah,
We're looking for
comfort,
comfort, safety,
safety, survival.
survival.
If victim mindset is a state of survival, what are we looking for when we are in states of survival? We are looking for any spots of danger. So when I'm in survival, fight or flight, anything and everything, the leaf moving there, the tree moving there, some noise there, I'm very vigilant about danger. So the survival state or the fight or flight state is actually inherent with no trust, because if I am too trustworthy, think of years gone by where we are in jungles. Okay, we are in fight or flight because while I'm eating my food, there can be a lion, that a tiger can come in, and literally I need to fight, I need to flight, I need to run, because if I don't run, I'm going to die. So I can't eat my food, I can't eat my meal in a very trustworthy, chill way and keep my guards down. My guards always have to be up. So I think the lack of trust is inherent in survival mode, and the lack of trust, I think, is one of the biggest things which I didn't think of before of a victim mindset, because there are times where someone is trying to sell me something or offer me a service, and I'm very vigilant at that point of time, very, very hyper vigilant. So it could actually mean that at that moment of time, our victim mindset is kind of activated. And sometimes it is good to be safe and have that vigilance a little activated so that we know that we are not being used or actually taken advantage of. But I would say when our victim mindset is activated, at that point of time, we are not thinking of thriving and we can't make sound decisions, because the only purpose is survival.
Yeah. So it's an interesting one, Yogesh. When you said about, being in survival mode, generally how we lived, centuries ago was in tribes. And as tribes, we would look out for each other and we would
Wow.
protect each other. So again, it's about, and those tribes, right, they actually thrived on trust, because I trust that you will protect me, and you trust that I will protect you. So we
Yeah.
had more trust at that time. And I think that where it comes from, right? It's a lot to do with, like, our own parenting, how we've been brought up by our caregivers. It depends on how our childhood has been like. Has it been traumatic? Traumatic doesn't
Yep.
mean extremely dramatic. It could also be how our life played out on the playground, right? In terms
Yeah.
of, did we get bullied, how we got bullied, and all those things. And one more thing, right? Interestingly enough, like, a thought came on me when I was in Turkey at the Grand Bazaar, right? And at the Grand Bazaar, they say you have to negotiate at least like 50 or 60% down. And if you
Yeah.
can't do that, you're buying something too expensive. And whenever
Yeah.
I'm there, once I've been properly there, actually. Otherwise, on my other trips, I never actually went there. But it was more about going from one stall to the other stall. And the whole thing is like, is this person trying to con me? Is this person trying to
Yeah.
take me for a ride? And it's
Yeah.
almost like looking at, again, it comes down to trust, right? Distrusting the
Yeah.
other person.
Yeah.
And again, it's not a fun experience. I remember telling my wife, I'd rather just go into a shop which says fixed price, and I know what the price is, and I know that it's like a reasonable price. I'll just buy it and go. And
Yeah.
again, it's about, I'm just thinking is that, when we are in that victim mindset and we're in that fight or flight mode, what we do is that we're so protective of ourselves, we prevent the good things from coming in as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's more about, it's interesting, right? We're in that victim mindset. We feel like a victim. We still closed, but at the same time, we want to be protected as well. We're waiting for somebody to come and solve our issues. We're waiting for
Yeah.
somebody to come and almost solve our shit because we feel like so powerless to do so. And another thing that comes up from a victim mindset is that although the victim itself might be suffering in that victim mindset, the victim
Yeah.
doesn't know that the victim is suffering. It could also be that the victim is thriving in that victim mindset purely because the victim mindset is serving in terms of some kind of advantage. Because when I say, oh, poor little old me, I'm always sick, life's been so hard for me, the
Yeah.
world feels sorry for me. And when the
Yeah.
world feels sorry for me, I get my needs for attention met that way. I need
Yeah.
get my needs for care met that way. Oh, this person's powerless. Let me take care of you.
Yeah.
And we don't realize that in that process, we're giving our power away. We're giving any ability to take responsibility away. We're giving all these things away, but at the same time, what we're saying is that we're all like, oh, I'm getting all the attention. And what does
Yeah.
attention mean? I'm getting all the love. People love me because I'm in this sad state. So yes, a victim can stay in that sad state because that's the advantage they get out of being in that victim mindset.
Yeah, wow. So many things you said, like there were so many thoughts coming up for me, but the last thing which you said is really powerful, which is victim mindset can actually get us love or attention, but it's never going to be high quality love because it's never going to come with, it's basically transactional, right? I'm playing this role to get love, and I get love, I get benefits, I get whatever kind words, but it's all from an obligation perspective because I'm showing myself as a powerless one and the other person is obligated to give it to me. So it is a lot of taking in things and it doesn't have the energy of giving out. Another thing which came up for me was it's a very high energy consuming thing. When you're in fight or flight, right, the battery drains really quickly. And that's the reason why we can't make good decisions. And the energy which you just spoke of, right? Think of you in the Grand Bazaar. You like a shawl, but you're like second one, then the third one, then the fourth one, then the fifth one. So it is very energy consuming and it's actually very addictive as well. It's like driving us, but we are like driven by it. And it's then not allowing us to make a good decision. And it's actually draining ourselves. Like, you know what? Screw it. I don't even want the shawl. So it just gives out the energy of not thriving. And when you use the word thriving in the victim mindset, it kind of like made me think like, you know what, how can I thrive in a victim mindset? But it is, for me, the word would be getting. Like I can get a lot of things doing in my victim mindset, but I'm not sure if I can thrive. So tell me more about this concept of thriving in a victim mindset.
So beautiful. So thriving, so again, like it's getting almost. It's not,
Yeah.
it's about, when I say thriving, right? I'm just thinking it talks about it's about getting that kind of attention, getting that,
Yeah.
there's something, getting that love, because attention is almost misinterpreted for love. And that feels like, oh, they all care about me. So as a
Yeah.
victim, I feel that I'm thriving. But actually it's not thriving, it's getting. So another important part is that, it's also addictive for you, as you said. So when I'm getting the love, it's great. But if that some person, right, becomes busy in something else, doing something else, and cannot give me that love, what happens in my mind is that that person's, because I become the victim for that person as well. It's more like
Yes.
that person's become evil. So it's again, things were great, and then I don't know what happened to this person, and then this person doesn't love me anymore and doesn't care for me anymore. And it's just interesting how we increase our own suffering in the process. We suffer in the
Yeah.
process because, again, and we're also right. What does it invite? It invites like behaviors like people pleasing. It's like,
Yeah.
I will do anything you want because of that little bit of praise that you will give me. Because that little bit of praise that you will give me means love for me, means
Yeah.
that I am cared for. But it's about how much power have we given away? It's more like I'm powerless to do anything by myself. If something happens, somebody else needs to step up for me. I cannot step up for myself. If
Yeah.
somebody doesn't step up for me, then that person is also the bad person. And I've become a victim where that person is concerned. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that when we are in it, right, we don't even understand that it's almost like blaming the other person. It's always like, oh, because of this person, this happened to me. Because of that person, that happened to me. And that's how we ruin our lives.
Yeah, that's very, very, very profound. I think if I understand it in my words, it's basically because victim, the love that they're getting is transactional, or the attention they're getting is transactional. Once that transaction is not being done, the victim feels wronged. Like, he's actually blaming the other person because, like, you gave me attention because I showed these behaviors, but you're not doing it anymore. So this is wrong. You are wrong. You are bad. So I can understand that. And regarding thriving, I think what came up for me was there's an illusion of thriving during a victim mindset. It's illusion that I'm getting what I want and it's a good space, but it isn't actually happening. The net on ground zero level and what's happening inside is actually not true. So, Ali, as we move on, I think we've spoken of victim mindset in with regards to money a little bit in transactions. We've touched upon victim mindset in dynamics within people. I'd like to go a little bit more specific. Victim mindset in relationships. Do you like to go? What's your take on it?
So, victim mindset is more about, let's pull out a classic example, right? So let's say a child, right? He's been brought up in an extremely traditional household. And in that extremely traditional household, the man doesn't have to get up to get water, and the water is always served to him, right? And then what happens is that so this boy becomes big, becomes a man, gets married, and now it's more like he wants water, and his wife is like, "Go get it yourself. I'm not getting water for you. Like, you should get it for yourself." And it's more like he feels like a victim. He's like, "Oh my God, my mother's always done it, and my mother was such a sweet person, and you don't do it for me." And that would make you a bad person because you know what? As a wife, it's your duty to get me water because, again, that's a belief that we've been brought up. So I would say that let's see how this is what's coming up with for me when I think about relationships, right?
Interesting. So, would you then say expectations bring out a victim mindset?
It can do. It can do. Expecting. So, in a relationships, what we do is that it's not only us, right? We don't bring ourselves only to the relationship. We bring our parents' marriage into a relationship as well
Yes.
because we are
Yeah.
a byproduct of that. So it's about when we've seen things in a certain way and it's more like, okay, and things as they change and we don't like that change because we're not used to that change is not familiar to us. It might almost feel that we're being stepped upon, dominated over, and that might make us feel like a victim, make us feel powerless in the relationship. In the end of the day, it's all
Yeah.
about getting a glass of water, right?
Yeah.
So it's about either feeling powerless and saying, "Oh no, you know what? Like nobody can get me a glass of water in this house," or actually stepping into power and saying, "Okay, you know what? Pick up a glass, fill the glass of water, and drink," and that's
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
again, very much so.
I think what's coming up for me is identifying with some roles. Like, say, if there's a very strong level of identification to something and that brings out expectations, that could bring out a victim mindset. For me, I think the biggest thing that's coming up is awareness. And I think this is the thing which I've seen. What you touched upon is beautiful, firstly. A lot of my clients who've had victim mindsets, and I think we all do in some areas of our life, and it's all a work in progress. But a lot of my clients who've bought in victim mindsets have come up, has been brought up by their parents, one of them who had a very high big victim mindset, or a lot of trauma coming in during childhood, a lot of things that happened with them in life. Anything can trigger a victim mindset as well. So, say someone who's been in a relationship and got cheated on. Okay. So that could trigger such a big heartbreak for that person that they don't trust people anymore. And they could almost always be a victim in their forthcoming relationships because they are basically hyper vigilant of when their next partner is going to cheat. So I feel a lot of victim mindset can come up from a lot of areas. It's also because our mind is naturally developed. The brain and the mind is naturally developed to go in survival, because the key function of the mind was to keep the little baby alive. That's all was it. The mind doesn't know or isn't being programmed to thrive. So I feel victim mindset is going to come in naturally as people are more and more in survival. And I've seen that with my family, my parents who have been in survival, and they are his parents who were in survival, even more survival because of the partition, because they were seen very dire circumstances. So I feel awareness of these aspects, once you can get awareness, the victim mindset can be shifted. But I feel without the awareness, we are stuck with a victim mindset because this is all we have. And there's a kind of an identification to it that this is me, this is my personality, this is who I am. Till we have that very strong identification to our lives, to that, it's very difficult to change it.
That's beautiful, Yogesh. What you just said made so much sense. And, this also reminds me of like a post which I'd written and a few weeks back. So there's like, just imagine there's this mother, right? She's a victim of a victim's mindset. And she's already got that victim's mindset. And let's just say that she has a child and the child is 6 years old. Every time the child loses a race, she justifies him losing the race. And instead of pushing him, she's like, oh, I understand, that it was really hot that day. You didn't have enough water and you couldn't do it. One day there was no food. It's just, she's always justifying instead of powering this child, because all that she knows, love is about justifying. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. So instead of pushing the child, that this child goes for football lessons and loses in a football match. I know you can't do it. No matter how hard you try, you can't do it because other kids, they just do it better. Maybe you're not made for this. Now try something else. Now try something else. Now let's just look at this example, right? What's this mother doing? She's showing love by saying, oh, you can't do it. You can't do it. And what is the child? Oh, I can't do it. I can't do it because, somewhere down there, I am disadvantaged as compared to everyone else. So it's okay. Life is actually harder for me than anybody else. So things are going to be much more harder in my life. Now so take this child, now bring him into, say, 20 years later. Now this person's in a job and doesn't meet a deadline. What is he thinking? He's like, you know what? Everybody is better than me because everybody's better than me because this person has this Excel skill and this person has this word skill. But you know what? With me, it's more like I'm disadvantaged and maybe I'm maybe borderline dyslexic as well, or maybe I've got other things as well. And therefore, I'm completely disadvantaged. So every time, something comes up, he's justifying it to himself. And he doesn't even know that. He doesn't know that he's justifying all of himself. So in the end of the day, reality isn't that bad. But it's about this person has the power to change the reality, right? This person has the power to work harder, see what his weaknesses are, work on his weaknesses, hone in on his strengths, and become more. Like in the end of the day, life is all about working on into improving whatever we want to improve. But this mindset is more like justifying it. Oh, you can't do it. But when you can't do it, then again, there is no argument left at all, right? There's nothing left. So you're comforted by it and you feel loved by this, that, oh, I can't do it. But what have we done? We've given the power away. We're not taking any responsibility. We are not responsible. The other people are responsible because they are too good. We are not the good ones. We are just the disadvantaged ones. So, there's this word, I can't remember this author's name, and he uses the word, it's a story of a frog. It's a coaching book, and he uses the word plum, which stands for poor little old me. And every time something happens, it's poor little old me. So that's what's coming out for me.
Absolutely. I think we are in sync there, because when you were talking about your story, the only thing that came up with me was, oh, poor me. Poor me can't play football. Poor me is now not made for coming first in a race. So once that becomes an identification, right? That basically in your story, the mom has programmed that belief so strongly that is me. That is now me. That's very hard to change when that is me, right? It is part of my DNA. So the victim mindset can become part of our DNAs, and then it is very difficult to change. And even then, change is possible. But knowing that it's actually not you, it's not actually part of you, it's actually just a way of seeing things, perception, awareness, and how I've always done things doesn't mean that is you. So I guess what you just said was very profound. And on that note, I feel there is so much to talk about the victim mindset, but I think there is something we can go deeper into in next episodes. So for today's episode, Ali, what are your things that you're taking away? What are you learning about the victim mindset?
So, what I'm taking away from the victim mindset, beautiful question, was that until this conversation, right, I thought that, the victim mindset which I had was like, it's pretty much gone because I've dealt with it. But
Yeah.
what happened was through our conversations, right, our initial conversation, that unearthed a bit more of the victim mindset, where when you asked me the question about trust, and I'm like, oh, wow, I can see that playing well. So for me, what's coming up for me is like, where is this coming from? This thing about trust. So it's something that for me to take away from and actually work and explore for myself. So thank you for that, Yogesh.
My pleasure. And that's beautiful to actually say it out there so boldly and having so much courage to say it. I have the same philosophy. I feel that we all have had inherent victim mindset, and I understand it where it's coming from. It's actually the mind. We needed survival during our childhood days because that was needed by the baby to survive. But after that, it doesn't serve. So I guess with regards to negotiations, there is fight or flight, hypervigilance happening for me as well. And I think a lot of it is to do with relationship with money. There can be a victim mindset with a relationship with money, although you might have changed a lot of your victim mindset in your relationships, in your intimate relationships. So I feel our human life is an endeavor to constantly know, get to light about what new thing is coming up, and then work on it. So I would say more power to you on this journey and more power to everyone listening today. I just want you to see, not with a judgmental tone, not with an eye of I'm bad, but just with the perception of and the idea of, you know what, where is it that it's playing out, that a victim mindset is playing out. And once you can know that, you can know it where you're getting too anxious about things or it's really draining you out. Those are signs where your energy consumption is very high and the victim mindset is activated. And in some scenarios, it's needed to be activated, where if someone is there with a gun, you need to activate your fight or flight and the victim mindset so that you don't become a victim of that scenario. But most scenarios we don't encounter where there's a gun on our head, right? But there is figurative guns on our head, which we actually think of, we perceive it that way. So if we can just be aware of it, we can actually change a lot in our own lives. And that is where I want to end today's session at. Thank you everyone for listening in. If you think you have, gained some growth in your victim mindset, we'd like to hear. If something is still playing out in your lives, in the lives of the ones around you, we'd like you to share that as well. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is your host, Coach Ali and Coach Yogesh. And this is What a Guy Wants podcast. See you next week. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast on Spotify. I'm not here for the obligatory like, share, and subscribe. The whole purpose behind What a Guy Wants is to make you a better man. If you think this is making you a better version of yourself, please like, share, comment, and see you next week.